All right, so it's my honor to be here today and talk to you about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, which is leadership. And I understand that many of you are business owners, and some of you are leaders by default, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. And some of you are aspiring leaders, and that's great. That's why you're here. You're aspiring leaders. I'm going to talk to you like your leaders, period, end of story. I'm going to tell you some stories. I'm going to tell you a little bit about things that I've done as examples. And but I want you to know, in those 30 years, I was a mayor, I was a CEO, a COO on multiple occasions. I was a human resources expert, specialist. I was a head of enlisted career counseling for the Marine Corps. I was a strategic analyst and a bunch of other stuff, on top of being an artillery officer. I commanded formations of security forces, which includes MPs, artillery, infantry, overseas, and in Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom. In all of those things, in doing all of those things, I learned a couple of lessons, just one or two. And in my time afterwards, I learned that everything that you learn in the military is applicable on the outside. It's all applicable. You just got to know the battlefield that you're on. And every battlefield that I was on was different. Sometimes it was in Washington, D.C., on a political battlefield. Sometimes it was out in Iowa on a recruiting battlefield. Sometimes it was in some faraway, godforsaken place where I didn't really want to be and nobody should really be there. Doing things that we all didn't necessarily want to do. But anyway, so to understand leadership, understand that in my 30 years plus, I came to a definition of leadership that says that a leader inspires his people to transcend to something greater than themselves, to become better, to become a team, to accomplish a mission. And that takes time, effort, and a certain amount of experience. Leadership is best learned not from a book. I've written a book, okay? You can read all the books on leadership you want, and you should. It's personal development. It's good. But no book is going to make you a leader. You have to practice, and you have to learn by doing. Leadership is an apprenticed vocation, and it's best learned from a master. Now, it's not easy. Life isn't easy. If somebody told you life was easy, they lied to you. Life is hard, and leadership is hard. And if you don't disabuse yourself of that, then you go through life getting punched in the face, because life isn't easy. But it's a lot easier when you learn the lessons, put them into practice, make a plan, and execute it. Now, I was raised in a family. You heard both my parents were World War II veterans, and our family motto was my dad's favorite admonition. Whatever you do, give it 110%. Give it 110%. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you get through whatever the challenge is in your life by giving it 110%. But we know it's hard. The Lord Jesus Christ told us it was hard. He told us we had to pick up our cross and walk behind him, follow him. The church has always said that suffering and sacrifice were part of redemption, necessary for redemption. I'm telling you, as a leader, no worries. I am neither a theologian nor a priest. As a leader, it's hard. It takes effort. It takes suffering and sacrifice. And in that suffering and sacrifice, we gain insight to ourselves and to what we're doing, to our mission, to our people. So I was raised in this family where leadership and giving it 110% were watchwords. You heard my bio. I followed my brothers into the service. My dad spent 30 years in the service. But we weren't rich, but we were tough. It was the family motto. I mean, my dad, it was a great compliment when my dad would turn to me and say, "Thomas John, you one tough hombre." Man, that made me feel good. But we were tough because my dad deployed for 8 months at a time while my chronically ill mother was in the hospital. And us 6 kids were holding it together, learning how to be resilient and getting tough. And my parents did it well enough, and that 4 of their children went into the military, seeing what that was, and even with all of the challenges. But those challenges are what life is about. Without toughness, you don't grow. If you don't approach the challenge, you don't get better. You don't have sacrifice and suffering. You don't wrestle with yourself. If you want to be a leader, you have to commit to the idea and then do what's necessary to become that leader. You have to expose yourself to the challenges of life, business, whatever the venue that you're going through. The life of a leader is a life of study, action, reflection, and refinement. You have to do it continuously. Continuously. If you do it fast enough, you're successful. If you can learn and act and reflect and refine and start over fast enough, then you win the race. You win the competition. You accomplish the mission. And you get better. So, in doing those things, that action has to be taking on the challenge. And that takes toughness. When I stood in front of my first platoon of Marines, about 40 Marines, I'd gone through the Naval Academy. That 110%, effort got me through the Naval Academy. But when I stood in front of my first 40 Marines, I looked at them and I went, wow, they've all got more experience than I do. And they're not just Marines. They're fathers and brothers. They have families and lives outside the Marine Corps. I owe them the best I can give them. I need to learn this quickly. And so I studied my occupation. I was an artillery officer. I studied my occupation. I studied leadership. I put it into action. I reflected on, I won some, I lost some. I reflected on it, and I refined my approach. And I did that enough and fast enough that as a lieutenant, I was a success. So being what the military is, they said, go to recruiting duty. The hardest peacetime job a Marine can have. Now, I didn't want to go to Iowa on recruiting duty. I wanted to go to the battleship Iowa. I was really, we still had them then. So I wanted to go to the battleship, but no. And I had to get over myself, my own, not anxiety, anger at not getting to do what I wanted to do. But I also knew that this was the hardest thing that the Marine Corps could put in front of me, and I needed to learn it quick. And I needed to get on it. Well, I was very fortunate. I checked into a recruiting station in Des Moines, Iowa, and in that recruiting station were some super professionals who were authentic leaders who understood recruiting, and they taught me, and we were successful. For 18 months, we were on top of the world in enlisted recruiting. And then the next challenge. I got a fax message saying, go downstairs and join the officer recruiting office that hasn't made mission in 7 years. Okay, so I went down there and proceeded to get my tail kicked for about a year. Making all the sacrifices I knew, applying everything I had learned about enlisted recruiting. I was marginally successful at best, and I was in pain, suffering. Something had to change. I had bought a day timer, much like this one. Actually, this is just the envelope, right? There's the rest of it. I bought a day timer, and in the back of that day timer was an advertisement for Dr. Charles Hobbs' Time Power, Insight on Time Management. And I had, for the first time, a weekend off in a year. It's the first time I'd been working 20-hour days, 7 days a week for a year. And so I put the cassette tape in. Yeah, there were 8 hours of cassette tapes. And I sat down on my living room floor, largely because there were only 2 places to sit in my apartment. And I listened. And then I put in the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I listened to 8 hours. And it rocked my world. I had some epiphanies. I realized that time management is life management. I realized that if you want to be happy and successful and fulfilled, then you have to align your performance with your values and beliefs. It's called congruity. Now, congruity is the appropriateness and harmony of you with events in your life. I don't like to talk about balance. I don't say balance because I just don't know a whole lot of really successful, expert people who actually have balance all the time. You may have balance on the grand scale, but you don't have balance all the time. In fact, you can't. You have to have laser focus at certain particular times in certain particular endeavors in your life in order to develop the expertise to become successful. You have to. But the idea of congruity is that that's all in the plan. Today, it's all about my work. Tomorrow, it's all about my puppy. Really, I have a puppy at home. I have proof. But that's what you have to do. So I don't talk about balance. I just talk about congruity. There's a harmony to it. You know you're doing what's moving you, your family, and all of your greatest values forward. But I didn't have any in that first year on recruiting duty. I lived for one thing and one thing only, 20 hours a day, and that was finding the next Marine officer candidate. And that's okay. But I wasn't doing that exactly right either. I didn't have all of those priorities aligned either. And I was in pain. And that idea of congruity rang my bell, set off the sirens, and I said, this is it. And so on Sunday, you know what I did? I took those 8 hours of tapes and I listened to them again. Only this time I had a stack of notebook paper and a pencil, and I was taking copious notes and writing things down. And for the next week, I was feverishly capturing my vision, values, mission, purpose, right? Unifying principles and goals. I was writing all that down. And man, it was exciting. It was energizing. I knew where I was going. Because, you know, I sat there on the floor of that thing and they said, are you living what you believe? I said, I'm a Christian. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't reading the Bible. Okay? And I wasn't praying. Now, I don't know about you, but in the Orthodox Christian faith, if you're not doing any of those three, you're probably not a very good Christian. I said, I can fix that. Now, what else can I fix? What else can I get aligned? What else do I have to do to take the next step to move forward? So I started attacking on those goals. And I said, this works. This works. It can work for my work. It can work for recruiting. And so then I applied it to my office. 10 months later, when I left there, we were in the top of our district. 3 years later, all those things that I had written and put on the wall were still there, and they were still using them. Now, over the next 34 years, every organization that I went to, I taught these methods and the ones that I had developed over time, because there were lots of lessons, lots of challenges over those next 34 years. Growing, becoming what I wanted to attain. Now, leadership is not the same at every level. It was tough. Recruiting duty was tough. I got tougher because of it. I hated every day of it. But the things that I learned on recruiting duty, I still carry a day timer. I still make a plan every week, every day, every month, every year. Do things change in your life a little bit? Absolutely, they do. And that's why you revise them and you review them and you go after them. And you say, and you have to experience that. But as a leader, every level of organization is different. Every organization has its own congruity, its own harmony, rhythm, etc. In fact, that harmony and rhythm is, I like to call it the triangle, okay? Because you have the mission, whatever your mission is, the organizational dynamics, including your people, and then you have the leader. And those things have to be in harmony. Now, that doesn't mean we're all singing songs and it's kumbaya every day. Sometimes harmony is getting your butt chewed. That happens. It is a necessary part of the process. But it's a congruity that exists. And as a leader at every level, it is a little bit different. As a small unit, a CEO or the difference between a CEO and a project manager. Project manager's got 5 guys, CEO's got 350. The universal tenets of leadership are the same. What you have to do and what those leaders do to create that congruity, that harmony, which includes all of those things like culture. You, as the leader, have to understand, and it's different. It's very personal one-on-one when you have 5 people. When you have 350 people, toughness takes on a whole new idea. Toughness is now about making good policy. Toughness is now about doing the very hard right versus the very easy, slippery slope, take you to hell and back. Easy decision. If you understand where I'm coming from. So at every level, it gets different. At every level, you have to say, what do I get paid to do? And how does that make the organization go? Which comes back to the idea that a leader doesn't get to decide what they are. You decide who you are. I can tell you, right? I'm an Orthodox Christian. I'm a husband, a father, a leader, a mentor, a brother, a man, and a Marine. And I do a bunch of other stuff. But you have to decide what you need to do, because your role is to do what needs to be done for that organization. And it isn't always fun. It takes toughness. Toughness, understand, that ability to face challenge, face difficulty, both mental and physical. Stand up and do what needs to be done. Weather the storm. We have all those challenges in our lives. Those challenges existed for me when I came. They don't stop. They continue. In 2018, my wife and I said, after I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, my wife and I said, we're going to leave Northern Virginia and we're going to move to Texas in 2020. Okay. I had just started my business. The alumni chapter called me up and said, we need you to be president. Okay. The priest called me up and said, we need you to be on the board. And eventually I became the chairman of the board. And then my best friend calls me up and tells me that he's, been diagnosed with his 4th type of cancer. And then he needs my help with the VA. I'll stop, go help him, do what needs to be done, got him in the protocol and all of that. And he died the day before he was supposed to start. And my son's at Texas A&M and he blows out his knee. I'm in Virginia. And then we sell our house, and about the next day, there's a pandemic declared. And my wife says, do we go forward? I said, yes, go. Life doesn't stop for us. Let's go to Texas. We'll figure it out. I don't tell you those things for sympathy. That's just, in fact, on the contrary, that's how life is. That's what we go through. You go through it in your business. You go through it in your life. You go through it everywhere you turn. You're going to have those challenges. The question is, are you tough enough to get through it? We could have stopped. I could have said, no, I'm not going to, I'm going to shut down my business. I'm not even going to start it. We'll go to Texas. We could have said, we're not going to move to Texas. We'll stay in Virginia until the pandemic's over. Clock's still ticking on that. But we didn't. Because life is tough. And if we don't get tough, then we can't grow. Now, sometimes that toughness, look, life will provide suffering and cause you to make sacrifices. You don't have to go looking for it. But if you want to beat that, then you challenge yourself. You take on the challenge, right? You get the education. You find the mentor. You find the opportunity. You go looking for that challenge to grow yourself. Because you're not going to grow if you don't face it and attack it. Some people say fail fast, fail often. I don't agree with that. I like Rocky Balboa's approach. When he was talking to his son about life, he said, life is not about how hard you can get hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. But I would tell you it's even more than that. Leadership, life, It's about getting in the ring. The toughness to go, I'm going to climb in the ring. I'm going to fight it out. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to take this challenge head on. That's what gets us to the next level and causes us to grow and causes us to become a success. You have to take that challenge. So now, I hope I can leave you with 3 things. I hope I can remember what the 3 things are. Leadership, all right? Leadership is about your people. Leadership is taking and being tough enough to inspire your people to transcend to something greater than themselves. That it's learned in apprenticeship. That is, you have to do something in that cycle of study, action, reflection, and refinement. Ideally with some guidance by a mentor, a coach, a master in leadership. And last, you don't get tough. You don't grow if you don't get tough. You have to know what you believe and live it. Now, there's a whole lot of other stuff about leadership that I could talk about all day, and I would love to. And you know what? I don't think we hit all 4 pages of that thing. So if you really want me to, I can go back to it and get it. I'm teasing. I just want you to remember that those things, and the biggest thing is get tough. Be tough. Go after it. Take the challenge. Get in the ring. You've committed to some of that just by being in this room. You're young professionals. Now, are you going to be young professionals or are you going to be young, successful professionals? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And remember, all things are possible with prayer and heavy deadlifts.